So my name is Justin Chapman. I worked 28 years in law enforcement. The opportunity to serve the public was really important to me. That's kind of why I got into it. And I actually really liked what was available there for a job, meaning there was excitement. I could get into the foot chases, the car chases, the physical altercations. All of the exciting stuff was very drew me into the profession. But beyond that, even those might be the exciting things that maybe are the tip of the iceberg for a lot of people. But certainly beyond that, and really at the core of why I got into law enforcement was honestly the opportunity to help people. I felt like I had the ability to do that, and maybe some characteristics and skills that might help that way. And it was something that I felt would be a rewarding career for me, which it was. I did that for 28 years. I had the opportunity to do a lot of different assignments, from the ones you may consider the most exciting, like SWAT. I did detectives. I was obviously in patrol, school resource officer. There were a whole bunch of opportunities to train. We all as officers experience, for sure, death. We see death all the time. We see it in a lot of different manners. We see it in a traffic accident. We see it in suicide. We see it in the crimes where people are actually murdering and killing each other. We see them in the natural death situations where we get a call where we don't know why somebody died. And so officers are exposed to a lot of death in that manner, or in those manners. And for me, seeing all that over time, I do feel like I got a little jaded to it. And I specifically remember I went to my wife. This was years into my career, and I went in on a suicide. I was over the unit, and we went to. I got called early in the morning. Went over to a parking lot. It was likely a suicide. It was a suspicious death, but it was a handgun that was used, and a gentleman had used it to shoot himself in the head. And when I got on the scene, I remember going and checking out the location, looking at the scene around it, and seeing the carnage, which was pretty awful, and really taking a nonchalant approach to it. Like, okay, you guys okay? You need anything? And kind of moving on from there. And it was really kind of strange because I've been on a lot of scenes like that, some much worse than that. And it has a little bit more of an impact, but I think through the years you do develop a way to cope with it. A lot of it is through humor. We tell some jokes to each other, not because we're trying to make light of a situation, but to cope, to get through it, because they are awful situations. For me, I believe the worst situations for sure were those that involved kids. And I think I can probably remember each and every dead child that call that I went on. In somewhere, I remember as a detective, one that was, a child who passed away. It was just a few months old, and had, because there was not enough known about it. We didn't really know, so went to an autopsy. An autopsy of a child is pretty. I don't want to use the word crazy, but it's unreal, because we're supposed to protect kids, we're supposed to protect people, and then yet we go to a place where the medical examiner is doing exactly what they need to do to find out the cause of death and that type of thing. And that one turned out to be a natural cause. There was a tumor and everything else like that, but that impacted me. Later on in my career, when I specifically remember was going as a just after school had let out, had an elementary school, and a man who was involved with another woman in an affair situation which she had broken off, and she was trying to kind of get things back together with her own family. And this man had a grudge against her, and rammed him off the road in a vehicle that she had gotten into with her kids, and ended up killing her, ended up killing himself. Before that, he shot and killed this 10-year-old and a couple other kids. And that one, I think, has really stuck with me. I don't really think I'll ever forget the visuals of looking at that and seeing what I saw and knowing what had happened to him, and just the awfulness that comes along with that. And those are a couple of examples of hundreds of traumatic experiences I think that I've witnessed, that I've been a part of. And so the question comes, and I think the reason why we're here today was to kind of talk about, well, how do you deal with that without going completely nuts? And for me personally, I have a deep faith in God and a very strong family that kept me grounded. And I had a great wife. I still have a great wife that I could talk to about those really bad situations, and recognize that, listen, this for me, because of my beliefs. I don't think this is the end for anybody, and I think the wrongs that have occurred to people can be fixed and healed, and that gives me great comfort. And that's really truly what has got me through my career. I don't know that I'd ever say that I'd lost that faith, but I can say this: I did get to a point when I was in investigations. And in investigations, I was a persons crime investigator, so I would do homicides, sex crimes, robberies. Those were kind of the mainstay of that particular position. And so I caught like 3, 4, 5, or 6 different individual cases of child sex abuse right in a row. And normally, you may get one, and then you kind of get some other cases, like some dead bodies, honestly, and I could cope with those better. But when it would involve these kids, and you just see the awfulness that one person will do to another, in sexual offenses with young kids, and many of them by the person they trust the most, a parent, or a step parent, or somebody that's very close to them. Or doing child pornography, or things like that. Just awful stuff I can't wrap my mind around. I still can't. I actually ended up asking for a transfer when I know somebody needs to do those jobs, but at that point in time, we didn't have mandatory visits with a psychologist. We didn't have checkups that way. The checkup was the sergeant going, "Hey, you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not okay. I think I need a change. I think I need to do something different." What I'm really grateful for, though, is now, I know before I left, I retired about 2.5 years ago, but even a couple years before I retired, we were getting some very specific coping mechanisms for the detectives who were in those positions with those cases specifically, so that they could learn how to cope with them. I wished I had that for sure, because I didn't cope with them. I didn't know how to cope with them. All I saw was the horribleness, and I didn't know how to get around it. So, as officers, we're going to run into a whole bunch of those traumas, and some are really, really bad, some worse than others. And for me personally, if I were to boil it down to just a few concepts of how I was able to deal with them, number one would be my faith. My faith in a God that I believe is a just God, that will right all the wrongs eventually, really resonates with me, has resonated with me through my career, and I relied a lot on that to help me understand that the injustices, the things that we can't actually fix here, because every case is not going to be solvable. Every case is not going to be worked to a point to where we're content with it and feel like justice was served and everything's fair. So recognition there was huge. Having a person, specifically my wife, to be someone that I could bounce these situations off of, and get some input from her, and have a listening ear, and somebody who would understand that, or try to understand where I was coming from and feeling, was also critical for me to manage those stressors that I was having at the time. I think that other officers would also help out in that situation, where we could talk through things, talk through a situation, and be able to recognize that we did all that we could, even knowing that the final outcome may not be fair, may not get justice, at this the justice that we would like to see, but that we had done everything that we could to help out this person or this family or the situation the best that we could. As I mentioned earlier, I did have a situation to where I don't feel like I could cope with it on my own, or even with the stuff that we just talked about with other officers, with Faith, with my wife. It just got to a point to where it was a constant barrage that I couldn't get away from if I stayed in that position. So I actually asked, as much as I wanted to stay in that position, as much as I liked what I was doing with some of the other aspects of those investigations, I needed to go. I really needed to go for my own mental health, for my own spirituality, if you will. I felt like it was really affecting not me as a person, but really affecting like my soul. It was that bad. It felt that bad, and so I had to walk away. I had to ask for a transfer, and I had to get away from the influences that were constantly coming at me. Again, grateful now we have more resources, and maybe had I had those resources back then, maybe I could have stayed on assignment a little bit longer.